Our Bible reading this morning is Psalm 126. I don't have the page number because you'll find it's probably slightly different in the Bible from what it is in the prayer book, so I trust that you will allow me to just read it. When the Lord turned again the fortunes of Zion, then we were like those restored to life. Then was our mouth filled with laughter and our tongue with singing. Then said they among the heathen, the Lord has done great things for them. Truly the Lord has done great things for us, and therefore we rejoiced. Turn again, O fortunes, O Lord, as the streams return to the dry south. Those who sow in tears shall reap with songs of joy. They that go out weeping, bearing the seed, shall come again in gladness, bringing their sheaves with them. In the name of God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sanctifier. It was only a short psalm, but it's a very meaningful one. Just remember, or think about the people at the 8 o'clock service who had 2 other readings and a song after that, and then they were trying to think back. So I trust you'll be able to think back a little easier than they did. Our theme today is Hope Restored. So I'm going to ask you to reflect for a minute or two on what it means to you to have your hope restored. The season of Advent is meant to be a quiet, reflective time when we think about getting ready for Christmas. But any time I've been anywhere near the plaza lately, it hasn't been quiet and reflective. It just seems to be just get in and get as much as you possibly can. It really seems to be exactly the opposite. But for us, Advent should be a quiet time, and we need to fit into the busyness of our lives some quiet time each day. Our readings for the 3rd Sunday of Advent encourage us to remember the abundance of God's grace. I hope we can reflect on the ways that we've experienced God's abundance when all we could see was scarcity and then hope is restored. You'll notice that we've got our Advent candle over there, and you mightn't be very familiar with the tradition of Advent candles, but sometimes they're marked, like ours are, firstly with hope, and then with peace, and then with joy, and then love. Sometimes they have different meanings for people. Sometimes they're for the prophets and the patriarchs and John the Baptist and Mary. Anything at all to remind us to be thinking about the things that we should before Christmas time. But you'll notice that today we have the pink candle. Doesn't matter what you use or which method you use for looking at the candles, the 3rd week is usually pink because it's about rejoicing. And that's what we're here to be thinking about today, so that we can, as the psalm says, come home with shouts of joy. This psalm was called a psalm of ascent, or in some areas they're called traveller's psalms. When the Israelites were allowed to come home from Babylon after the exile, they were writing songs as they were going home, and you can imagine that they were full of joy. Their slavery was finished and they were heading back to Jerusalem. These songs were all collected at that time, and they were sung afterwards. They were sung at the major festivals. And if you know much about Jerusalem, you'll know that it's up on the top of a hill, on the top of Mount Zion. So whichever way you approach it, you have to go up to Jerusalem. And these were the songs that people were singing as they went up. They were songs about freedom from captivity. And that gave them lots of reasons to celebrate, to be full of laughter and joy. But I'd like to just go through slowly and look at the psalm a little bit closer. The first verse. The psalm first describes the dream that people were having, and then they were talking about the reality. There's only 6 verses in all. It's a very short little psalm, but it changes in the middle. So the psalm first describes the dream. The word Zion stands really for all of Israel, not just for Zion, not just Jerusalem, but for the whole of Israel and for its history. When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, that is, when God brought back God's people to where they were and should have been all along. The Jewish Bible describes the Israelites as veritable dreamers. It talks about people being or having a dream. And you might think of some other people in the Bible where God spoke to them through dreams. Not a daydream, but a real dream, something that was really wonderful. Not only did they have a dream, not only the Israelites, but the countries that were all around, the places all around, were aware that Israel was special, that Israel had a dream, and that God actually restored their dream. Their dreams is described as God restoring his people, and that causes laughter and joy and witness because the other countries around would see. The joy is the result of being restored by God. They're not happy because of their lifestyle, they're happy because of what God has done for them. It's a real deep down joy, something that is really God-given, and they're like those who dream. The psalm tells us when the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dreamed. There was great reason for rejoicing. God restored the people's fortunes and hopes. That was their reason. When the psalmist said this was like dreaming, he was comparing joy to a really good dream. If you're like me, sometimes you've had a lovely dream, but when you wake up, you can't remember it. Their dream here, they could remember. They knew it was a message from God. Today we hear a lot of things about living the dream, and you can live the dream if you win lotto. That's what it says on our TV. Or you can live the dream if you get a new vacation home or something wonderful. But that's not what this is all about. The people who think like that are missing real joy. Real joy is not financially living well, although it probably helps if you're not worried. But it's about, real joy is about being restored and brought back to who you were designed to be. So what's it like when we see people being restored? They were like those in a dream. The dream says, then our mouth was filled with laughter and our tongue with songs of joy. This is not just a little he sort of laughter. It's a real good laugh. I don't know the last time you've seen somebody who's really had a very good laugh. Some of what we see in our society doesn't give us much cause to laugh, but often we might chortle at something or have a bit of a giggle behind our hand. But this is not talking about that. It's talking about really good laughter. Our mouth was filled with laughter, really full. This joy makes you laugh so loud, so hard that there's not much room for anything else in your mouth. But our mouth was also filled with songs of joy. The sort of singing that you hear maybe in a sports stadium at the end of the FA Cup or something like that. When, not that people do it so much out here, but in England they'll often stand and sing at the end. They're really happy. Again, they're not happy because of what God's done for them, which is what this psalm is about. But they're so happy that people around are saying, something good's going on over there. I wonder what it is. I'd like to be part of it. When we get to verse 4, this is where it starts to change. And this is where the exiles coming back to Israel were having a little bit of trouble. They'd been living in Babylon, they came back to Israel, and now they were living on the edge of the desert. That's a hard sort of existence, but they were still full of joy because of what God had done. Having described the dream in the first half of the psalm, now in the second half, the psalm begins to show what it was like when they were restored by God. Being restored is being shown as a contrast, like streams in the Negev. Negev means the parched or the dry, very dry southern part of the country. So streams in the Negev is contrasting the water with the desert. When the rain fell in the desert, particularly over there, it often fell in absolute torrents. It made channels in the sand and it washed away where the seeds were planted. So you can imagine how they would have felt at that time. But in the years when the rain fell more gently, the seeds grew and crops were unexpectedly bountiful. But then we find another contrast. Those who sow in tears will reap with shouts of joy. When he goes out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, he shall come home with shouts of joy, bringing his psalms with him. You might have heard that lovely Bringing in the Sheaves song. I'm not suggesting that you people were singing it, but you might have heard older relatives singing it. It's a very old one. I'd like for us to read the psalm together so that we'll be able to really appreciate it and see if it makes a bit more sense this time. When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like birds in a dream. Our mouths were filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. Heaven said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, and we are filled with joy. Restore our fortunes, Lord, like streams in the deep. Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy. Those who sow weeping, carrying seeds of hope, will return with songs of joy, carrying sheaves with them. Just something to remind you a little bit about the joy, that deep down joy that comes from being restored by God. But I'm well aware that not everybody in our society is Christian. But you know, even in this time, outside the church, there still is a theme of joy. There still is a theme of hope coming through. People are looking and wishing and hoping for things at Christmas. It's our job to show them really what they're looking for. It's up to us to be the faith-filled dreamers that the world needs when it seems hopeless. But I'm going to ask you, what brings us light and hope? When Martin Luther King and Desmond Tutu were around, they said, "I have a dream." Their dreams restored hope, not only for them, but for their followers too. They may be described as dreamers whose dreams in the past have become an acknowledged reality today. Here's something to ponder though through the week. Who are the dreamers in your life? Do you have people around you who dream and see wonderful things? Who are the dreamers in our congregation? Who are the people who can change things? What are the types of changes that they generate? What are your dreams and hopes for the future? How do you live into this dream? Something to think about.